Hi, welcome back. So this is going to be the final video in this series, or not in this series, but in this section, and I'm going to be talking about something called a gitignore. So what is a gitignore? A gitignore basically allows you to sort of untrack files or keep them untracked permanently, or as long as you keep them in the file. So it's a file or a list of all of the files and directories that you do not want to track. So why would you use something like this? Well, there's a lot of files that you may not want. So for example, auto-generated files are very large and can be generated at any time. So if these files are similar to either one of those properties, you might not want to track them, especially because they can be rebuilt at any stage in the commit and it won't cause problems. So those are some examples of some files that you might not want to keep. So what I'm going to do is just create a new text file here. It's just going to be something called log.txt, and basically pretend that this is an auto-generated file. Every time I sort of made a difference or made a change, it would log the changes in this file. So I'm going to go and open this and type everything in. So just pretend that this doesn't really impact the project in any way. So firstly, let me just go and open this file right here, and I'm just going to say, I hope you enjoy. So pretend that this is the only file that I'm editing. I'm not editing anything else, but I go into my log and it also logs it. Pretend that that's a log. Let's go and check our status now. Now I actually did this before just to test it out. So you might see, oh my God, sorry. There we go. So you can see right here that we actually have something here. So we have modified file.txt, and then we have an untracked file, log.txt.txt. Of course, you can see I named it log.txt without using the terminal. So of course, it's log.txt, that's the name, .txt. Don't worry about that. So we don't know what this file is. What's it doing here? So we don't really want it. So let's just, commit it for now. We're gonna add all of our files, commit it. But the thing is, we don't really want these files because some of them can get really, really large, and over time it can make your project very slow. And if you want to commit, it's going to take much longer than it should because all of these files are so big and you don't really need them. So I'm going to just say modified text file. Just going to do that. Let's check our git status. There we go. So there's nothing there. So let's just make another change. For example, I'm going to go into my new website and I'm going to add another exclamation mark, and I'm going to add my log. So I'm going to log it into my auto-generated file. By the computer or the software would do this. And now I'm going to check my status, and there we go. You can see that it said modified log.txt.txt, and then we keep committing and adding, and you can see how this gets a little bit daunting and tedious after a while, because if you want to untrack these, you have to do this every single time you want to make a new commit, which is going to get a little bit tiring after a while. So how are we going to fix this? Well, this is where our gitignore comes in. So I'm just going to finish this commit. There we go. So this is where our gitignore comes in. So I'm going to create a new file called gitignore.gitignore. Doesn't have a name, so it's just dot and then gitignore, which is the file extension. Now if we go back into here, you can see there's a file with no name, so it doesn't have a name. So you're going to open it up, and now we have our .gitignore. So let's talk a little bit about how the gitignore works. Pretty much, you're just going to input the names or the oh, whoops, didn't mean to do that. You're just going to input the names of all of the files and directories you want to ignore. So I want to ignore my log.txt. What I would do is go log.txt.txt because that's the name of the file. I know it's a little bit confusing, but just bear with me for the time being. And let's say I wanted to ignore my home page as well because it's a static file. We don't really need to track it. So we're going to go homepage.jpg or JPG. There we go. So now we're no longer tracking these two files. But before that, I just want to organize this a little bit more. So I'm going to use hash, and then I'm going to input a comment to identify these. So I'm going to say auto-generated files, and then I'm going to say static files here. So things like images and other static files. So the hash followed by anything is going to be considered a comment. It's not going to be read by the Git in this file. So what if we go ahead and check the status now? Let's just say I'm going to edit my log and I'm going to edit my file. So I'm going to go there, edit my file, added maybe smiley face, something like that. What if we go ahead and check our status? You can see here that it still says modified log.txt.txt. What's going on? I thought we put it in the gitignore. Well, the first reason is that the gitignore isn't being tracked. Now, that's not the only reason though. There is still another reason, and I'll show you why. Now, when you add your gitignore, you usually want to do it at the beginning of your project when you first add the repository, and then over time you can change it and maybe add new things that you want to ignore, things like that. So it's not really common that you would add the gitignore at the end of the project, since what's the point? You already committed everything. But that's not what we're talking about here. So let's go ahead and make some more changes to our log.txt. In theory, it should show that there's nothing here. There's no changes because it's being ignored. So let's go ahead and check the status after we changed it, and you can see it still says it's modified. So what's going on? Well, pretty much in the cache, in Git's cache, it's still sort of remembering the files instead of completely ignoring them. So what you actually have to do is fix all of these untracked files so that they are ignored and they're off the cache. So the way to do this is first to remove all of the untracked cache files. So git rm -r -- cached and then dot. So this will remove all of the cached files. So you can see just like that, it's all gone. Don't worry, it doesn't remove your files. It just removes them from the remembering kind of system of Git. Now you're going to do a standard commit, adding everything. And I'm just going to say fixed file tracking. There we go. So now we did all of that. So let's go ahead and make some changes to our log. I'm going to go like that. And let's go ahead and check our Git status now. And there we go. You can see nothing happened even though we made a commit. So before I go off here, I just want to talk a little bit about the different things you can do with our thing here, our gitignore. So what I'm going to do is add a new section called auto-generated directories. Auto-generated DIRs. Now I'm going to make a new directory here called autogen. And I'm going to cd into autogen. Now I'm just going to touch a bunch of text files, just a bunch of spam. Just like that. I think 3 is enough. So let's just say these are auto-generated files, okay? So I'm going to first commit all of them. Well, actually, I don't want to commit these, but what I want to do is commit a new gitignore. So I can edit it and I can commit this new gitignore so that we ignore these files. And we're going to use the same process as before. But I don't want to really go through and specify autogen /a.txt /b.txt. If you have 100, 1,000 auto-generated files, this gets a little bit tedious. So the easiest way to do this is just do autogen / and then star. So star will basically ignore everything inside the autogen directory. So I'm going to go ahead and save that, and now I'm going to go and commit my changes. So I'm going to say edited gitignore, just like that. There we go. Oh, whoops, I'm still in the autogen directory. Edited gitignore. There we go. We did that now. So now why don't we go ahead and change some of these files. So I'm going to go into my autogen. I'm going to edit B. I'm going to edit A, just like that. I'm going to maybe edit C as well. And now let's go ahead and see what happens when we check our status. You can see that there's nothing there. So obviously we don't really have this whole remembered system error. This is because, of course, at the beginning we edited our log.txt before we actually committed it, or before we started working on our gitignore, so it's still remembering it. But in this case, we didn't actually modify it. We added the gitignore and then we added all of the files here and edited them, so this won't work. We don't have to do this whole clearing the cache. But just remember that for the future, If you add the gitignore a little bit later, after for example, you have some auto-generated files that have already been modified and listed in the system, and then you add the gitignore, just make sure to remove them from the cache using the method I taught you in this video. All right, that's pretty much it for auto-generated files, gitignores. You can pretty much do whatever you want with these. You can put as many files, directories. You can do everything with this. A gitignore is a very useful feature, especially for much larger projects. If you're using something like an already existing engine, Unity, Unreal Engine for making games, Visual Studio, for example, creates a lot of auto-generated files. It's very useful to have a gitignore to ignore these, so that when you push it to GitHub or when you want to share it somewhere, it does it very quickly, and it doesn't take hours just uploading random gibberish that can be created instantly, pretty much. So that's just a really useful feature, and that is why gitignores, you should use them in all of your projects. All right, let's move on.